welcome the chairman of the Radio Television Digital News Foundation Board of Trustees, Stacy Woelfel.
Good evening. The pictures and sounds you just saw and heard are just a small part of the coverage of thousands of journalists provided to the American public as the events of September 11, 2001 unfolded. As we approach the 10th anniversary of that fateful day, RTDNF thought it proper to honor the journalists who helped cover the story that day and in the days that followed, and we'll begin our dinner tonight doing just that. To assist me, I have the privilege of introducing our Master of Ceremonies, the anchor of CBS Evening News Sunday Edition, correspondent for CBS News Sunday Morning, and national correspondent for CBS News, Russ Mitchell.
Thank you very much, Stacy, and good evening, everyone. Tonight we'll recognize 9 journalists from radio and television who distinguished themselves with their coverage of 9/11 and the days that followed. On a night when we honor those who protect the First Amendment, there is no better time to single out the members of this brave group for the courage they showed to face the unknown danger of possible subsequent attacks to deliver the story to the American people. Now, it's important to note that each person receiving this recognition tonight represents hundreds, even thousands more journalists in front of and behind the camera who did the same hard work that day. Each will share a few thoughts about the reporting they saw that day. First up now, please welcome the host of All Things Considered at NPR, Melissa Block. Melissa.
Thank you all so much. I have to say, watching that montage just now was just like a sucker punch all over again, and we're coming up on the 10-year anniversary, and it doesn't stop hurting the same way that it did that morning on September 11th. For those of us who were in Manhattan on that day, it was such a beautiful, it was a cobalt blue sky and unseasonably warm. It was, you couldn't have asked for a more perfect day. And there's still days now when the sky is blue and the temperature is right, and all I can think is it felt just like this on 9/11. And the incongruity of that incredible day, punctured by the evil that took place, is just hard to imagine even now. Thank you so much for this award and for honoring NPR and all of the reporters in New York and Washington and in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, and all around the world who covered the news that day. But I also thank you on behalf of the voices that you heard on NPR during that time. One of whom, Thomas Innings, a lieutenant in the Port Authority Police, who was so traumatized by watching those bodies fell, as he was talking about, that he could barely talk to me, caked in debris after the towers had come down. I've been thinking about a woman I met late the night on 9/11, about 1 in the morning, and she was outside St. Vincent's Hospital in Lower Manhattan, one of thousands of people trying to find any news of their spouse. Her husband worked on the 97th floor of the Trade Center and was missing. And she was weeping to me, and the thing that she said to me that has stuck with me ever since is, what if he's in there? What if he's in pain and I can't hold his hand? I've been thinking about the people the bodies of their loved ones were never found, they were vaporized in an instant, and they never had the even semblance of closure. There's no such thing as closure, but the comfort, at least, of having someone to bury. And I think about the first day, about 2 days after the attacks, that I was down at Ground Zero near the rubble pile and watching this bucket brigade of workers in hard hats with little American flags sticking out of them, carrying out bucket by bucket little pieces of debris of the Trade Center, all the way down the pile and out to the bottom. I mean, it was so heartbreaking how tiny the amounts that they were carrying were. It all comes flooding back, and I think of all of the people we lost and all the people we've lost in the wars that have followed those attacks. And I just thank you very much for honoring NPR in this way. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Now, please welcome the national correspondent for ABC News Radio, Ann Compton.
Air Force One, there are television sets recessed into the bulkhead walls of each cabin. And as Air Force One flew that day in circles around the United States and the southern states there, we were able to watch very hazy pictures from the ground, picked up from television stations, showing the smoke, the destruction, and the towers crumbling. And from Air Force One, there was no way for the travel pool to share our information, or even the chilling remark from Ari Fleischer, the statement that the president was being evacuated. That wasn't until the unexpected landing in Louisiana for refueling, where we were provided landlines where we could begin to phone in our stories to the rest of the press. My fear was, as we watched this doomsday scenario unfold, that the press would be left behind in the name of national security at the very moment when I think the president needed to show the American public and the world that the government had not been crippled by the attack. A lot of people, including a member of Congress, were left on the tarmac. But one broadcast reporter, one Associated Press reporter, CBS camera crew, George Christian and Eric Washington, and a New York Times still photographer were taken back on board. We didn't know much about what was happening on the ground, but we did know that it was absolutely essential that a free press report on the decisions that a president was making in those moments of incredible crisis. Thank you all very much.
Next, let's welcome the education correspondent for NBC News, Rahima Ellis.
Good evening, everybody. Watching those images, my heart is racing. On September 11th, I was very afraid, but I was also very determined to do my job. And so were a lot of other people at NBC News, and I know you know why. Because people like me don't get on television without a lot of help. And we got a lot of guidance, including guidance from the executive producer of NBC Nightly News at the time. His name is Steve Kappas. He is here tonight as the president of NBC News, and thank you, Steve. I got my first report on the air by using a payphone. Cells didn't work that day, and it should be a reminder to us that we should never get rid of all those dirty little phones on the side. I was thrust into digital journalism that day as well, with one of the greatest producers I've ever had an opportunity to work with. Her name is Mary Beth Toole. We got a video camera. Not quite sure how to work it, but we figured it out. And we went through the streets of Ground Zero, through the dust and the rubble and the remains. And we did reporting all day and all night. And that night, I closed my eyes for 15 minutes, sitting in a crew car just a few blocks away from Ground Zero. And for only 15 minutes, I closed my eyes. I was too afraid to do anything else. We didn't know what was going to happen next. And I heard and I could feel the beat of my heart for every 15 minutes. But that was me. Bill Stepman was an engineer in Tower Number 1 on September 11th. He was manning the transmitter for WNBC. And when Jeff Birch saw the tower come down with our colleague inside, his knees buckled, but his resolve didn't. And somehow, he managed to figure out a way to get another transmitter on top of the GE building at 30 Rockefeller Plaza so they could continue to broadcast the news. It was an important thing to do. On behalf of all of us at NBC News, I thank you for remembering those of us who just did our job that day. Because when you remember us, what's most important is that you remember and that you honor all the thousands of people who lost their lives that day.